Officers in NYPD responded to a man who was accused of abusing his mom. When they show up, things go south very quickly. We'll talk about it today, and we'll talk about how this is a training lesson for all of us in law enforcement. Let's watch.
Okay. All right. I guess at some point she fell, hit her head. She got a little bit of pain in her head. So for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to remove you from the situation. We're going to go back to the precinct while she gets checked out, make sure she's okay, and go from there, okay?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So what I'm going to just say now is I'm going to ask you to turn around and put your hands behind your back, okay?
That's not, we can step out.
Okay, but we're not stepping out now.
Yeah.
All right? So can you do me a favor and just put your hands behind your back and turn around for me? Listen, right now what you have is, she said something happened, push, she has a little bit of headache. That's minor, it's a misdemeanor, it's nothing. You're on camera, you're with us. If you don't cooperate and resist, that becomes a whole nother thing. That's on camera, that's obvious.
Let's pause for a minute. Well, everybody likes to use the catchphrase de-escalation nowadays, and these officers did a phenomenal job de-escalating. They actually tried to convince him that, hey, look, even though there's some allegations against you, most likely what's going to happen is you're going to have a misdemeanor arrest on your hands at the end of the day. But yet that de-escalation seemed not to work. Now, before we get back to the video, one of the things I want to highlight is that this is a bad position for the officers to be in just because they're in such tight quarters. And the reason I'm doing this is because I know I have a lot of police officers that follow me, and some have even mentioned that they use my videos in their training briefings. And so I do want to address some of the safety issues in this scenario so that way as officers we can learn from it. But these are very, very tight quarters that these officers are dealing with the suspect in. And so it's always better if you can to try to remove that suspect from the home, or at least try to find an area with more open space just in the event you get into a use of force encounter. Let's continue to watch.
Right now you have a he said, she said.
You can step out for a second.
Don't make this hard. Don't make this harder than it has to
Step out for a second.
We can't step out now, okay?
Yeah, well,
All
I
right.
mean, I
All
should.
right. So I'm gonna grab your hand.
Don't grab. Look, let me get my.
No, we talk.
You have a very, very big man that you're dealing with in tight quarters, and if you try to go soft on him and stuff like that, he can now take control of that situation, which would be a very, very bad ordeal. And that's when it's appropriate to be quick and utilize overwhelming force against him, so that way he doesn't catch you off guard or by surprise. And you'll understand why that's important as you continue to watch.
I got you. I got you. What's going on?
You got my gun! You got my fucking gun! Shoot him!
Don't make this hard.
No, we're past that point.
Don't make this harder than it
You can
has to
step out for a second.
We can't step out now, okay?
Well,
All right.
I mean, I should.
So I'm gonna grab your hand.
Look, don't grab. Look,
No, we can put your hands behind your back.
I got you.
Shoot him!
So before we move to the last part of this video, I want to address why I talked about the overwhelming force. As you can see that the suspect did not want to go into custody, and at that moment in time, he started resisting the officers. So what I mean by utilizing overwhelming force, I asked you the question, Would it be wrong for the officer to literally tackle this guy up against the wall, maybe utilize some type of palm strikes or whatever it may be to take him into custody? If you guys saw those actions of the officer against that suspect, some of you guys will say, oh, well, that was excessive force. Why did they punch him? He just didn't want to go with the officers. Why? They even came into his apartment. Some of you guys will say that was not necessary if you guys saw him do a palm strike or tackle him up against the wall. But when you overwhelm somebody that doesn't want to go into custody, it allows you to gain control and catch them by surprise, so that way you can get them into custody as quickly as possible. And sometimes utilizing overwhelming force doesn't always look pretty. But had that happened in this situation, they could have avoided the situation that we saw occur right after this. What ends up happening is these officers get into the scuffle with the suspect, they go down to the ground, and the suspect is successfully able to reach and grab the officer's gun and fire off a couple rounds, I believe actually striking one of the officers. At that moment in time, the officers elect to utilize deadly force and stop that threat, ultimately killing the suspect in his home. But could it have been avoided? It could have possibly been avoided if they were able to utilize that overwhelming force. Now, there's one other part that I want to address about this video, and I think it's important. Let's watch.
Melvin? No, we talked. Put your hands behind your back. We talked. You had to.
Hold on. I got you.
Watch out!
Get my fucking gun.
Now, this is the part that I want to address. Now, before I address this last part, realize that I love NYPD officers. I have a lot of friends of mine that work for NYPD, and I'm not trying to be overcritical of my brothers and sisters in blue, but I think there's so much that we can learn from other people's situations. And because I know people utilize my videos for training, I want to address this part so that way we can avoid what we see next. One thing we have to address is that if you're in the professional law enforcement, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty and do things that nobody else wants to do. If you see your partner struggling with the guy on the ground and you know the guy has possibly grabbed your partner's gun, you need to get in there and help your partners out as quickly as you can, not flee outside the room and then start shooting back towards your partners where you can actually strike your partner by crossfire. Now, I know some of you guys have probably already discussed this, and again, I'm not trying to address it to throw you out there like that, but I think there's so much learning that we can do in this scenario. They are so lucky in this scenario simply because their partners weren't shot or killed by friendly fire. If you do this job of law enforcement, you have to have the mental capacity and the mental fortitude to say, hey, look, I'm willing to do the things that I don't want to do. And sometimes your back is going to be up against the wall and you're going to realize that this could be life or death, but we signed up to go towards the gunfire, and so as much as I always defend the actions of what we do as police officers, I also have to remind us that we did sign up to go towards the gunfire. And so in those moment in times, you got to go handle business. And if somebody is fighting with your partners and they're fighting for their life, you better be jumping in that pile, making sure that you can help save their life as opposed to them losing their life at the hands of some careless or reckless suspect like we saw. So a lot of learning points in this video. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below, but crazy situations. We have to retain our firearms as police officers. And that's why I said at the very beginning of this video, we want to be careful operating in close quarters because you never know what can happen next.